converted man here. Miracles, how do they work? Are they even a thing? How would you identify one? These are good questions that I'm positive Adherent Apologetics will totally answer in his video. That's a response to a different YouTuber, so I'm gonna skip past the part that's a response to that YouTuber and really focus on his argument for what a miracle is, and maybe if he tells us how to identify one, that would be great. So anyways, I'm gonna play the video, pause it, or fast forward it if I need to or whatever, and respond to it, and that's what this is. So here we go. By the way, links to his video playlist will be in the description of this once it goes live on, or once it's done on YouTube. So yeah. So yeah, here we go. Yeah. Here we go. All right. Yeah. Say yeah one more time. All right. Okay. Skip.
This video is the first part of a response.
Okay.
So has he? The link to the full playlist is in the description.
All right.
Let's get this video going. So to start off, I just wanted to define what a miracle is. My favorite definition comes from C.S. Lewis, who said that, quote, I use the word miracle to mean an interference with nature by supernatural power.
Okay. There's a problem there. Didn't really define the word, because now you have to define another word, which is supernatural. It's kind of like saying, well, what's a spirit? Well, a spirit is a soul. Well, what's a soul? It's a spirit. Well, it doesn't really tell us what it is at all.
C.S. Lewis also says that, quote, it is therefore inaccurate to define a miracle as something that breaks the laws of nature. If God creates a miraculous spermatozoon in the body of a virgin, it does not proceed to break any laws. Dr. Peter Kreeft and Friar Ronald Kelly also lay down a great syllogism for the argument for miracles. A miracle is an event whose only adequate explanation is the extraordinary and direct intervention of God. There are numerous well-attested miracles. Therefore, there are numerous events whose only adequate explanation is the extraordinary and direct intervention of God.
Woo! I was wrong to go live. I could have done a whole video about this syllogism. Okay, so let's see. Premise one, the only adequate explanation of this thing is the direct intervention of a different thing. So the definition of X is Z. Z is only, or well, okay. The definition of Y is X. X is Z. Let's see. There's plenty of. Let's see. X is okay. Sorry. It's really hard to do it on the fly. It really is. Let me get up a MS Paint here and do this in a different way here. You get to see me deconstruct an argument live. Wow. This is going to be thrilling, hopefully. Maybe not. Let's see. All right. Let's see if I can share the news screen here. Application window, paint. Yeah, here we go. All right. Okay, great. Let's see. Here we go. Print screen that. Slap that here. Okay. All right. Is it doing the thing that I wanted it to do? Yes, it is. Okay. So let's see. Sorry about this. You know, I mean, I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. Okay, so M is G. Okay. There is M, therefore G. Let's see. M is G. There is M, therefore there's G. Let's see. A to B, A, therefore B. Okay, that would work. Okay. Yeah. Just making sure that the dang thing is formatted correctly, okay? So, of course, we don't know what a miracle is, but it's defining this word in the first premise to be linked to G. So you would need another argument to support G, and then you would also need an argument that supports M. So this would have two instances of failure to provide an argument, because you would need an argument that miracle is actually a thing, because just simply saying that it is an event doesn't show that it is an event. You can say that it's defined in this way, and that would be okay, but it's not. That's not how it's written. And then, well, look at how messy I've made this now. And then you would need another argument for God, and okay, then of course premise 2 is simply asserted without any evidence at all, so it's a bald assertion. There's no examples, no citations, no anything. So it's another failure to give an argument, as well as it's just a bald statement without any proof. So then of course, conclusion doesn't follow. All right, don't need to say that. All right, so wow, that premise, that conclusion was bad. But what else do you got here? All right, let's see. Go back to the thing. All right. Okay, like I said, this is a response video to a different YouTuber. I'm not that YouTuber, so I gotta skip past all of this. It doesn't really matter, because, well, it's weird, because I'm responding to a video that's a response to a video. Yeah. Well, that's a good question. How would I know what a normal indirect intervention would look like? Right. If there's no way to categorize what a miracle is separate from what a mundane normal event is, then the two become insignificant. So my suspicion here is that because rationality rules makes an argument against miracles breaking the laws of nature or being supernatural, that then using this other argument that says, well, but miracles aren't breaking the rules. They aren't really supernatural, even though they kind of are supernatural, but they're not really. It's not breaking the rules. It's just using different rules and so we're using this definition, not that definition, therefore your argument's invalid. Okay, but then you have a new problem. You now need to show your new definition, regardless of how, that's how you want to use the word. Fine, great, wonderful, terrific. But you need to demonstrate that that's a thing in the first place. I wonder if I'm right. Let's see. Well, 2 to 3 days depends on what yom means. So it's interesting that he says just because this is true. Like, no, he wasn't saying that it did happen. He was saying that even if it happened, it wouldn't prove any of the other events happened. But of course, you believe that it did happen. Whatever. Anyway. Oh, did I? Yeah. You know what? Yep. Okay. Yeah. You know what? So when I reloaded the screen, I forgot to click on the share audio bit. So anyways, he says, even if Jesus resurrected, it wouldn't prove that Jesus had done the other things. And so there you go.
Healed the blind, walked on water, was born of a virgin. However, if Jesus did rise from the dead, I think there are a few clear implications. First, if Jesus was raised from the dead because of an action by a supernatural power, that would prove that there is, in fact, a supernatural power. And
if Jesus was resurrected by a supernatural power, that would prove that there was a Yes. Now prove that he was resurrected by a supernatural power. It's like, if Jesus was resurrected by alien technology, that would prove that there's alien technology. Yeah. Duh. You don't need to say that. Yes, we know. Now just prove that there's the thing. Come on, man. Okay.
If this power has the ability to raise someone from the dead, it's clear that we are dealing with a power much higher than us.
Well, are we though? See, this is the thing. Like we're gonna get, maybe, probably, who knows? But we'll get to technology that we weren't at, right? If we keep going, unless C-19 kills us all. But whatever. We've already brought back people that were pretty much dead, as far as, you know, as far as that term really can apply. I mean, there's a difference between cardiac dead and brain dead, and it's thought that once you're brain dead, you can't bring someone back. But there have been people that were brain dead and cardiac dead, and then things started up again. So our medical technology is at the level where if you went back in time to an earlier time, from their perspective, it would be miraculous. It would be magical. It'd be miraculous. It would be like, that's impossible. That person was dead, and all you did was, you know, you pushed on his chest and you put some liquid into him, and like, oh, now he's alive again. That's not possible. And, you know, this is magic, and you'd probably be burned as a witch or something. So that's great. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. So now that you've distracted me, and it's your own fault, you need to say that this power, you know, it's at a higher level than we're ever going to get at. Well, you don't know that. You could say that we're not at it now, but that doesn't mean we're never going to get at it. Now, consider that they're working on nanotechnology, so we can't see it, right? Little, you know, robots that will do stuff medically and otherwise. So hypothetically, you could have an advanced civilization that just sends out nanites to repair somebody internally from their injuries and resuscitate them back to life, even after a severe injury. Now, they're still going to have to get the plasma and blood from somewhere, somehow. But again, we'll just assume that they grab enough of that as they're, you know, flying through the air or crawling on the ground or whatever. Maybe they stole it from the disciples or whatever. So now we have nanites that were responsible for bringing Jesus back from the dead. Why not? And then you say, well, if nanites exist, then that's proof that nanites are responsible for bringing Jesus back from the dead. It's not an explanation unless you demonstrate that nanites exist and were there at the time to do that thing. You can't just say, well, it could be that. Sure, it could be anything. You have to demonstrate that that is the thing.
Anything that is a part of the universe. Second, if Jesus was raised from the dead because of the actions of a supernatural power, it puts a lot of credibility to his teachings. This is because if Jesus, a man who claimed equality with God, was raised from the dead by a supernatural power, God, then if anyone has the stamp of approval from God, it would have to be him. God wouldn't raise someone from the dead who was promoting false teachings.
How do you know that? I think I'm like having flashbacks. Have I responded to this video before? Maybe I have. And if I have, I apologize. Whatever. Look. No, it doesn't mean any of that, because the deity might not be the deity you think exists. It might be a different deity. I don't know if you can hear the sirens. Okay. See, there's the deity now. It could be a trickster god. It could be a god that is interested in messing with people and like, what will happen if I bring this person back to life? You know, you don't know that. Oh yeah, I approved that guy's message. He wasn't lying. That's why I brought him back to life. Yeah, you don't know. You have no idea. Because the entity, whether it's a deity or aliens or nanobots from the future or whatever, or maybe the ancient civilizations had nanotechnology and that's how they built the pyramids. And those things have just been running around resurrecting people randomly, and Jesus just happened to be resurrected by them. You don't know. By the way, if I'm being a little loud, it's because I can't hear myself because I have the earphones on. So, yeah.
Likewise, even if it was unimpeachably proven that Peter Link was indeed saved by a divine intervention,
it
would not.
Whatever.
With Stephen, this is Logic 101.
Wait.
This idea,
Chronos. This just isn't how logic works.
With this idea, I'm completely on the same page with Stephen. This is Logic 101.
But unfortunately, most proponents of miracles implicitly do think that this is how logic works.
No. Most proponents of miracles don't believe that's how miracles work. Stephen just makes a claim here and doesn't back it up with any sort of evidence.
Oh, man. You know how frustrating it is when somebody says something and provides zero citations for it? Do you know how irritating that is, Adherent Apologetics, when somebody does that? Do ya? Because I do. It's really annoying. So, yeah. You shouldn't have such a broad brushstroke like that. Say, well, most or all the arguments do X, Y, or Z without demonstrating that this is the case. Now, it happens to be the case that I have a couple of videos that have been around a while that I haven't had any response to from any theist at all. So maybe we could get a response to those videos, and then that would be your answer to this. That you would demonstrate by argumentation that well, not all theists have this idea. So let me just go ahead and not forget this time. So here's a video I have called Supernatural. And it asks this question about what the supernatural is and how it works. And it says essentially that even if it was a thing, you wouldn't ever be able to identify it because of what the definition of supernatural is. Now, you can have your own definition of the word supernatural and say, well, your video doesn't apply. Okay, great. And that's the end of that, I guess. And there's also this, let's see. There we go. And then I have another video, basically almost the same thing. Miracles, even if they exist, they can't be identified because of the definition of it. So if you simply say, well, that's not my definition, then yeah, great. But you still need to demonstrate that your definition, didn't share the audio, that your definition is well, okay. That the thing that you say is true is actually true. Oh, did I just shut that down? Oh man, I'm doing great. Why did I think going live was a great way to do this? I don't know. I don't know. I'm stupid again. Yeah, whatever. And all right, there we go. Here we go. Share audio. Yes. Here we go. Okay, there we go. All right, it's back. Okay, so now this is not the same thing that I had back in the supernatural video. This is a different thing. And I can't, there we go. Now I can hear myself. Okay, so if I make the claim that this is supernatural or that this is a miracle, and I then say, well, it's not the sort of supernatural miracle that requires denying the laws of physics or nature. It is the sort of supernatural miracle that is only explainable if this guy is God. Does that make this guy God because this thing exists? No. Okay. Because I have failed to show any sort of association causation between this and this. I've failed to show that this is God. I failed to show that this is supernatural. There's all sorts of failures within that argumentation. Okay. I need to demonstrate that this is supernatural and or that this is a miracle in the first place. And simply saying, well, it's not the sort of miracle that breaks the laws of physics, which is typically how miracle is defined. And all we have to do to prove that point is just type in the word miracle into Google and find, a definition. Defined. Here we go. Thank you. Yeah, all right, there we are. Let's share that screen. Don't forget to. Yeah, there we go. Let's not forget to do the thing. Okay, that's really small. There we go. Here, let's make it bigger. Okay, so the first definition is exactly what he's saying it isn't anymore. So it's no longer surprising welcome event that is not explicable by natural scientific laws, and therefore it's considered to be a work of a divine agency. It is not that. Okay, so well, what is it then? If it's not that, then what is it? And if we don't have an answer, if his answer is simply, well, a miracle is the thing that you can only explain using God, that's still not an answer to what a miracle is, because you really haven't, you've said, well, it's this, and this is only explained by this, and that's the definition. And you go, okay, well, that doesn't really, it doesn't, you still need to show that this is. How did it do that? Oh, must be a miracle. So it doesn't change anything. The burden is still upon you to demonstrate that this is a thing in the first place. It doesn't matter what you think it is, you need to show that it is. And I get it. It's easy to just shift the definition of miracle and decide, well, I'm going to use a different version of miracle. Well, la-di-da. You haven't done anything to demonstrate that miracle is still a thing. So we're asking, how do we know it's that in the first place? And even worse is if everything in the universe was made by God using the laws of physics, and a miracle is not something that breaks the laws of physics, then everything is a miracle. And that means the word miracle has no meaning at all. Every event would be a miracle. Jesus rising from the dead, big deal. I can do this. I can bend my fingers like that, and that is a miracle. Why? Because God made it so that I could do that. So nothing is extraordinary anymore. If everything natural is a miracle, then the word miracle has no meaning anymore. And if the word miracle only applies to things that we can't explain without God, and everything is explained by God, then nothing is not a miracle anymore, because everything would be a miracle. Am I getting through to you yet? Whoopsie! I did. See what I did. I blame miracles for that. All right, back to this.
Much higher than us or anything that is a part of the universe. Second, if Jesus was raised from the dead because of the actions of a supernatural or anything that is a part of the universe,
hold on,
much higher than us or anything that is a part of the universe. Power has the ability to raise someone from the dead. It's clear that we are dealing with a power much higher than us or anything that is a part of the universe.
How do you know? Again, nanites could explain it. And that's not, I mean, yeah, it's some years into our future technology, but it's not beyond the scope of reasonability, I don't think. Small, tiny robots that are, you can't see without a microscope, they're running around and they brought somebody back to life. And from the outsider's perspective that knows nothing about nanites, that would appear that would be somebody was dead, and then all of a sudden, they're fixed and they're walking around, and it's like, they fell off a building and they landed and they're like, ah, and then all of a sudden all the blood and bones and stuff are all attached together really quickly, and they stand up, go, whoa, man, I got a headache. Or maybe they don't even have a headache. They're like, well, that was a thing. I guess I better be careful, That, and we're like, hey, witchcraft, burn them. Except in our day and age, we wouldn't burn them, I don't think. I'm not sure what we would do, to be honest, but probably wouldn't be good because we're kind of dumb still. But anyways, it would be amazing. And then we could say, well, that's a miracle. And you can say, well, how do you know it's a miracle? And you say, well, it has to be something that only God can explain. And you go, okay, well, how do you know that only God can explain what just happened here? How do you know that it's not something else? So, well, because I can't think of anything else. That's not good. Well, there's no other explanation. How do you know that? So you haven't avoided the appeal to personal incredulity and or appeal to ignorance at all. You've just shifted it. And also you have no way to assert that it's not something inside of our universe, because for all you know, it could be an alien civilization. In fact, according to that one guy I talked to in that other video that I did a thing on, he thinks alien is God. So why not?
Second, if Jesus was...
Oh, dang damn it. See, look, this is great. I don't know why. Yeah, there we go. Okay. I know what I'm doing.
Jesus was raised from the dead because of the actions of a supernatural power. It puts a lot of credibility to his teachings. This is because if Jesus, a man who claimed equality with God, was raised from the dead by a supernatural power, God, then if anyone has the stamp of approval from God,
I already covered. I already covered that. I already covered that, so I went back because
teachings.
Likewise, even if it was unimpeachably proven that Peter Link was indeed saved by a divine intervention, it would not logically follow that a man called...
This idea, I'm completely...
Most...
Yeah, so again, because when I closed this, it went back a bit, so I'm skipping through what I've already covered or what doesn't really need to be covered.
He just makes a claim here and doesn't back it.
Just as a side note, look, your argument is what matters, okay? Nothing else matters. But I gotta say it, because I'm sure somebody has to tell him. If you just trim your eyebrows just a bit, you wouldn't look so angry. It's like your bushy eyebrows, man. They make you look angry all the time. Ah! Okay, I'm sorry. That had nothing to do with his argument. And pointing it out also was very, I feel bad. But I felt, see, I went with my emotions. I felt I had to do it. So I apologize.
Get up with any sort of evidence. If you're going to make a claim like Stephen does, you have to provide evidence.
But the evidence is the fact that the thing happened, and you can't explain the thing without the thing. There you go. Yeah, so what's your evidence of a miracle?
Weren't atheists the one who were always talking about the burden of proof?
And to demonstrate this, here's but one example from Frank Turek.
And if it is true that that Jesus really did come and say and do the things that the New Testament writer said he did, then whatever he teaches is true, because if he rose from the dead, he was God. If he taught that there will be an intervention, then there will be. That's the argument. I don't have time to support it.
I bet you don't.
So there's a few things I want to say about this Turek clip. First, I think that Stephen chose an unfair clip, because if you pay attention at the end, Turek says, I don't have enough time to support this. I wanted to find this clip in its context, but I got the classic YouTube video unavailable screen. But I think it's safe to assume that Turek was in some sort of debate where he didn't have time to explain his whole argument. So to expand on Turek's argument, the one he would have made if he had the time to make it, if the New Testament accurately records what Christ did and say, it's clear that Jesus believed that he was God.
And that doesn't matter, not even a little bit. It doesn't matter what somebody believes. It matters what is true. People believe today that they are God, or a version of God, or something like that. In fact, there's a guy around right now that thinks he's the reincarnation of Jesus. So, you know. Oh, Jesus. Let's see. Where is this guy? Here's the thing. 10 men who claim to be Jesus reincarnated. Let's see. It was Vice, I think it was. There it is. Yes, there it is. Okay. All right. Let's just get to the thing. Where is the guy? Come on. Show me the guy. Show me the guy. Show me the Jesus guy. There he is. There he is. Here we go. Here we go. All right, now to switch. Now, see, it doesn't let me just do this. Oh, man, it's so difficult. Why does it have to do this? So here's this guy. This guy absolutely probably believes that he is Jesus resurrected. He's in Siberian. He's got a bunch of followers. Now, that's not what Jesus would look like, because Jesus would have been looked like a Jew. You wouldn't have looked like this. So, you know, that's the classic English version of Jesus. But at any rate, this guy believes he's Jesus. So what? Who cares? Doesn't matter what somebody believes. All that matters is what is true and what can be shown to be true, not what somebody believes.
This can be seen from Matthew 9 and Mark 2, where Jesus forgives sins.
Blah,
something
blah,
that
blah.
only God could do.
Now, I can forgive sins. I forgive nerdy rodent sins. I forgive main gun sins. I forgive my own sins. I can forgive sins all day long, because sin is also a made-up idea. So anyone can forgive them. You know, I can say, oh, that's a sin, and I forgive it. Well, anyways.
Jewish culture. We can see further that Jesus was God from the passages where he says that he and the Father were one. And when Thomas calls Jesus my Lord and my God, and Jesus doesn't correct him. So if Jesus was raised from the dead, then it would be a confirmation of his message by God. Because it would...
Nope. Again, God could be a trickster, so it doesn't confirm anything, even if it happened. And it could also be nanites, or aliens, or nanite aliens, or time travelers, or...
be illogical for the Creator to raise someone from the dead who was spreading false teachings.
So God might not be logical.
And it makes sense that whatever he said is true in the word of God.
Not even a little.
Anyhow, to reiterate, even if true, the vast majority of miracles wouldn't prove the existence of a God, let alone the existence of a very specific interpretation of a very specific God.
Yes, one miracle doesn't prove that a specific religious belief is true. The only exception to this is the resurrection, because the truth of Christianity is based on the fact that Jesus rose from the dead. If Jesus...
Did you just say what I think you just said? Let me just go back a bit. Maybe I'm crazy, but
specific religious belief is true. The only exception to this is the resurrection, because the truth of Christianity is based on the...
Okay, wait. All right. And now see, if I was editing this video, then this would be way cooler than I'm doing now.
Let alone the existence of a very specific interpretation of a very specific God.
Yes. One miracle doesn't prove that a specific religious belief is true.
Okay. One miracle doesn't prove that a specific religious belief is true. Okay. That's what he says. Then he says...
The only exception to this is the resurrection.
That there's an exception. Now, if I had edited this video, I would just play those clips back to back to back like a bunch of times and like reverse it and be like, you know, and add in effects or whatever. And I'd be like, ha 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 ha, because it's special pleading. Either he, no, one thing doesn't prove a thing true unless it does. It's like it'd be like the Mormons being like, well, no, yes. We agree that one miracle doesn't prove a religion true, but the one miracle of the golden plates does prove that we're right. Yeah. Or somebody else like, oh, but I've got two miracles. Oh, yeah. Oh, come on, man.
Direction, because the truth of Christianity is based on the fact that Jesus rose from the dead. If Jesus did not rise from the dead, Christianity is false. But the fact that if a miracle has occurred, it shows that there is a supernatural power. It's a good thing we have a brain so we can figure out who this power is. So that's part one of my response to rationality rules. I just want to say so far, he's definitely come nowhere close to debunking the argument.
He's come nowhere close. Yeah, sure, whatever. Okay, now
what's up, everybody?
There we go. So here's part two. I wanted to get to part two because I saw part two and I wanted to respond to part two, but I felt it was unfair to respond to part two unless I looked at part one, and I might have already looked at part one. I don't know. The arguments that I've looked at are all starting to bleed together in my brain at this point, so who knows. But at any rate, here's part two. By the way, Adherent Apologetics, if you do see this, which I doubt, you need to add that to the video playlist, which you haven't done yet. So just letting you know, and then it will be, yeah. Anyway, so
everyone, this is part two of my response to rationality rules. He's claimed that he's debunked the argument for miracles. Now, since this is part two, I highly encourage you to watch part one. The link to the full playlist is in the description if you haven't seen part one already. That's going to cover a lot of ground, such as like, what is a miracle? Does a miracle support theism?
Well, it covered a miracle is something that can only be explained by God, which didn't tell us anything about what a miracle is. It just said that anything that cannot be explained unless there's God is a miracle, which means that everything is now a miracle because everything can only ultimately be explained by God, because his version of miracle is not something that breaks the laws of nature as we know them. It's that God is doing something that can only be explained by, but then and I already said all that, but you just, it's just, yeah, everything is a miracle, or only certain things are miracles, but then those certain things are miracles, and we're not going to tell you how to identify a miracle, because it's just, you just know it's a miracle, I guess, anyways.
And things like that. But for now, let's get it going.
Numerous accounts of flightless animals raining from the sky. And needless to say, on just...
Okay, so, yeah, this is, an analogy of something that people think is a miracle happening. And, this is like look, in the past, people believed that lightning was from God, and people might believe that animals falling from the sky is a sign of God or something. I remember one time, little tiny frogs were falling down from the sky, and it was like the weirdest thing. It was raining frogs. It's the weirdest freaking thing I've ever seen. And they were really tiny, and some of them didn't make it, but some of them did, and it's just like, this is wild. And, I mean, I didn't think it was God or anything, but somebody could have thought that it was God or a sign from God. Anyways, but that's not anything that you can ultimately have to explain by saying God did it, because there is an explanation that is not God, which is
that would be and is an outright.
Yeah. What is the thing?
This explanation is quite simply
that's
a tornado that's formed over a body of water.
Yeah, there you go. So so it's a tornado. That's the natural explanation. But you could go, but that tornado is ultimately explained by God. So you can always assert that the thing is ultimately and only explained by God, so that tornado is also a miracle.
Otherwise known as a waterspout, violate, because they argument from ignorance, but rather it's a personal incredulity fallacy.
I just want to start off by saying that I agree with Stephen that you just can't assert that a miracle has occurred just because there's no natural explanation for the phenomena. Most of the time, weird things happen and there is a natural explanation. The problem, though, with this assertion is that it seems like to me, Stephen believes that you cannot believe something is true unless it is proven to be true.
That's not what he said at all. So you're now asserting what you think he might be saying into his argument. There's a word for that. It's called straw man. Or maybe it's 2 words. I don't know. Autocorrect keeps telling me that straw man isn't a word. And I'm like, no, it's a word. It's like, no, it's 2 words. No, it's 1 word. Anyways, autocorrect is stupid. Except when it's autocorrect is proof that this exists. Sure, why not? Whatever. Lobsters. There you go. All right. So, no to whatever he said. And look, you can't just say this is probably my opponent's argument. No, it's not. So whatever you're going to say next is going to be a straw man. But because I am responding to this, can speak for myself and nobody else. And I will say that if it can't be shown to be a thing, then yeah, you should probably be skeptical of it. However, there are things that we don't need to be skeptical that much of. That is to say, we could be skeptical at some level, but we don't have to be skeptical to an extreme level. There's a balance in all things. Declaring that this damn thing is a miracle is something that you should be skeptical of. Now, maybe you have an idea of what this is and how it works, and even where it came from, or who or what manufactured it, or if it just was something I found in nature growing out of the ground and how it does that or whatever. Maybe you have the answers for that, or maybe you don't. Either way, there are things that we must be skeptical of, because the claim is something unusual. If I claim that this little guy on my head is going to stay on my head, apparently that claim isn't true, because it rolled off my head and ruined my analogy. Okay, let's try this guy. Here we go. Come on, stay on there. Yes. If I claim that this guy is going to float off my head, then that's a pretty extraordinary claim, and you're going to want to see it just go floating off my head. And I will see, look, it will only do it when I'm not live on camera. It will do it when I've recorded the video. Well, yeah, but you could just be using special effects. Come on, do it live. No, it won't work. Why not? Well, because that's not how it works. It only works when it can't be tested. Anyways, but yes, claims that do not have empirical evidence, repeatable tests, or a valid and sound argument are ones that you should be skeptical of. That's different than saying a claim without proof. In fact, the claim that you're about to go into, because I already listened to some of this video before starting this live recording thing that I'm doing. Live recording thing? I don't know what this is. This, it's, we'll see. Here, let me just get into it. Okay.
This type of skepticism is just not a solid basis for knowledge. For example, most people believe that George Washington was a historical figure. But if we go by the idea that you can't believe something unless it's proven to be true, we need to doubt the existence of someone named George Washington.
But it has proven to be true in multiple different ways. And so, no to this idea. But let's go ahead and go with this straw man that you're creating. What would it really harm for me or anyone else to doubt, to be skeptical of George Washington existing? On the surface, really not that much. It wouldn't really change my day-to-day life. It wouldn't really affect me. However, I would caution this. When you notice that your skepticism in something requires you to begin to believe in other things, it's no longer skepticism because you're adding beliefs onto it. So if I said, well, I don't know whether George Washington was real or not, on its own, pretty benign. Then I go, wait a minute. This picture on the dollar bill, that's supposed to be George Washington, but I didn't know that he was really real. Now I have to form some sort of explanation of who that picture is of. So if I now say, well, this is obviously a fabrication, well, now I've gained a belief about what that picture is that I didn't have before. So now I'm beginning unreasonable assertions. I'm beginning to acquire beliefs. And I go, okay, well, obviously they fabricated it. Who's they? Now I have another belief. Well, then there must be some conspiracy, and then there's another belief and another, and it piles on rather quickly. Now, there is what's called an apocryphal story about George Washington, that he chopped down a cherry tree, and then when asked, he said, I cannot tell a lie. I did chop down that cherry tree. But although it's a story, nobody thinks it really happened, even though it could have really happened. Why don't we think it really happened? Well, there's a lot of stuff that is beyond my particular field because I'm not a historian of reasons why we think that didn't happen, but it's still a plausible story. But there's reasons to be skeptical of it. And being skeptical of it doesn't require you to add beliefs. In fact, it requires less beliefs because when did he say this? Supposedly when he was younger. Who recorded it? We're not told. Where and when did it happen? Who knows? But it's a story that seems to have come about because people wanted him to be seen as an honest person. And this is a good way to remember that he's an honest person, is to tell this story, even if that story never actually happened. It's similar to the whole thing that Abraham Lincoln fought zombies. There was a movie made on that, but there's good reasons to doubt that movie might not be as historical as you might think. Plus, at no point did George Washington ever rise from the dead, so I don't really have that many reasons to be skeptical of George Washington.
This is because, by this way of thinking, sure, we have historical documents claimed to be written by someone named George Washington, but that doesn't mean that George Washington actually wrote those documents. Sure, we have countless textbooks that talk about George Washington leading the Americans in the American Revolution, but that could be anyone. Or it could just be a made-up conspiracy to put this guy named George Washington in the textbooks. You can't prove that he led the U.S. Army. Sure, there's a body underneath a tombstone saying George Washington, but that doesn't mean that it is someone named George Washington. That could be anyone's body, or it could just be some sort of error. Stephen also appeals to an argument from ignorance. When someone
It could be those things, but in order to believe all that, you now have to acquire beliefs, whereas before it becomes unreasonable because you're no longer being skeptical. You're now adding ideas onto it. We don't even have Jesus's body, and in fact, you couldn't have Jesus's body because apparently Jesus buggered off back to heaven, body and all. However, the bleep that's supposed to work.
someone appeals to an odd event as a miracle because you cannot provide a natural explanation for that event. Now, I do agree that if you just say, hey, this thing happened, and there's no evidence that shows that there's a natural explanation, therefore it's a miracle. I agree. That would be an argument from ignorance, but most of the real serious arguments for miracles, that's just not what they're saying. It's also ironic because the opposite form of an argument from ignorance is when you say that a proposition is false because you cannot prove that it is true. And then it seems like that's exactly what Stephen is doing when he asserts that an event must be proven to be believed.
But he didn't assert that. You asserted that. He didn't say that at all. You did. So, like I said at the beginning, it's a straw man. So, yeah.
And this brings us comfortably to a necessary question that is extremely effective at exposing a third fallacy that ravishes miraculous assertions. This question is, how exactly can we distinguish a miracle from an unlikely natural occurrence that we are yet to comprehend? It's a very simple question, but it's a brilliant one, if I do say so myself.
Now, Stephen asks a good question here, but it's a question with an answer. I think there's a couple of things that can be done to answer this question. First, if the person claiming a miracle has occurred has an adequate explanation, there should also be a burden of proof on the skeptic to give at least a reason to doubt this person's explanation. To the atheists out there, if you want to make any headway with a theist in an actual conversation, you are going to have to give him a reason to doubt his miracle claim. Second,
No, that's not how it works. That's not how the burden of proof works. It is not upon me to demonstrate that this idea that you have is false. It's upon you to show that the idea is true. This harkens back to a debate that I had on S.J. Thomason's channel about, Jesus' resurrection, where I tried the tactic of reductio ad absurdum. Now, I don't know if anyone liked or didn't like that because nobody gave me any feedback, but at any rate, well, except for a few theists who were like, that's not enough. You can't just reductio ad absurdum it. I'm like, well, but I can, and I did, and now what? Anyways, it is ridiculous beyond all things to say, well, I saw Jesus come back from the dead. And then for me, the skeptic, to say, really? Prove it. Say, well, I saw it. Okay. I don't know that you actually saw it. So what you can't offer me the sort of proof that I want because I wasn't there. I didn't see what you claim to have seen. Maybe you are mistaken. Well, come on. I couldn't be mistaken. Prove to me that I'm not mistaken. Well, your brain can play tricks on you. No. My brain doesn't play tricks on me. It also reminds me of, the Mandela effect. I did a video about that quite some time ago. My goodness, a long time ago. And I had people who believed in the Mandela effect telling me that, no, I was wrong, that no, their memory wasn't like that. Their memory wasn't one that could fail them. And I'm like, yeah, do you remember what you had for breakfast last week? Well, no, that's different. This is something I would not forget. How do you know that? Well, because other people also forgot the same thing that I forgot, so that means something. No, it really doesn't. But it does. No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean anything. And it doesn't mean the thing that you think that it means, even if it means something. You can't link the two. Well, it must be another universe. No, it isn't. You just don't remember, and everyone else also doesn't remember. And then you've decided that an explanation that has absolutely no evidence for it is now the actual explanation for it because it makes sense. The Mandela effect is a great example of a modern day appeal to ignorance and or personal incredulity. That here's this event that I don't really quite remember. And I've found other people who also seem to not remember that event. And of course, there's a psychological explanation to explain that, of why people think that they also don't remember that event that way. And these are very mundane, very small things like, oh, look, you know, the Bernstein Bears is the Barnstein Bears or the whatever. And I remember it this way, but it's not that way. And that must mean something. Okay, well, what does it mean? Alternate universe. What? Where did you get that from? Just, well, it's an explanation, and now it's up to you to prove that that's not the answer. No, that's not how it works. The burden is on you to show that there's an alternate universe. Not up to me to say, well, maybe it's just your memory that failed you. And the reason why I brought up the debate is that I said, you know, I knew that my opponent wanted me to provide a plausible explanation for the Jesus resurrection narrative. And I absolutely refused to do that. I refused to do it in my opening and then later when he asked me questions. Because it's not upon me to tell you this is what really happened, because every single natural explanation is automatically going to beat out the supernatural one because we have no example of a supernatural. And you can replace the word supernatural with the word miracle, and it would still be the same problem. You have no example of a miracle in the first place. So unless and until you do, it just doesn't matter. You have to demonstrate that it's a thing. It is not up to me to show you that it isn't a thing. There's plenty of plausible and possible explanations for what you think you saw, what you did see, or what you remember, or what somebody somewhere said that they saw, that then someone else wrote down way later on.
And to answer Stephen's original question about how we should distinguish a miracle from an unlikely natural occurrence, I just want to say that the idea that since most explanations in the past have had natural explanations, therefore explanations which do not have an explanation now will be a natural explanation is, as Inspiring Philosophy notes, a future humans of the gaps fallacy. I know I just said the word explanation a lot, and you're probably like, what is this guy talking about? But to further clarify, when someone says, I don't know why you believe a miracle happened, but because in the past, explanations have always been natural, therefore yours will also have a natural explanation, that is a faith-based position.
Not really, though. If it has been the case that every single time humanity has said this, whatever this is a natural thing. Lightning, the fishes falling from the sky, you know, volcanoes, thunder, rainbows, whatever. Humanity, every single time that humanity has said, and not collectively, but some part of it, has said, oh, that's a miracle, or that's God, or that's nature with a capital N, or whatever, that they have been wrong. That gives an awful amount of credence to the idea that in this situation, maybe humanity was wrong and there is a natural explanation. But I will say this. There's no reason to think that the resurrection of anybody occurred at all, ever, because we don't have an example of that, except for the one example that we do have, which proves that lobsters are God. Oh, I mean, no, except for the part with medical technology. Then we actually have an explanation that the medical technology assisted in the recovery of these people that were at death or near death or dead as far as we could tell at any rate. You know, they're flatlined and their brain flatlined, and all of a sudden, beep, 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 and they're back. And it's like, well, that's interesting. And you can say that that's a miracle all you want, but you don't know that it's a miracle. And you say, well, you don't know that it's not a miracle. Well, sure, okay. And that's assuming that the event actually even happened. Let's just say that today, in the modern day and age, where technology is rampant and the recording devices are like freaking everywhere, if Jesus appeared in our modern day and age and said, hey, scientists, you know what? I'm going to prove to you that I can do this. I want you to put me in a lab. I'm going to get killed and I'm going to come back to life. And it was well documented by everybody, you know, that can document such a thing. You know, cameras were there, people were there, reporters were there, scientists were there, and everybody watched. Doctors monitored him, and he had all these plugs in him, and he, you know, he's like, okay, everyone, and his heart gets stopped, or he shoots himself, or whatever the bleep it is that he does. Maybe he has to hang from a cross. I don't know. Anyways, but he dies, and it's like no question he's dead, and they're monitoring. They see decomposition happen, and then all of a sudden, it all reverses instantaneously. Now he's alive again. That would be amazing. That would be phenomenal. And if none of our instruments could tell us how that happened, that would certainly be amazing. But we couldn't then conclude, well, it must be a miracle, or it must be something that only God can explain, because we still don't have God. We only have this person that has done something we've never seen before happen. And sure, it's extraordinary, and there's more to learn from it, and we could study it, and maybe we could figure out how it worked. But if we get to the point where we say, well, we don't know how it works, to assert then that therefore it must be God is still an appeal to ignorance. You don't know what the answer is. That's where it stops. And that's if you actually had the phenomenon in question to test. Now, if it wasn't Jesus, but it was God instead, and God let us test it, and we couldn't figure out what God was or how it worked, how would we know it's God? Well, I don't know that answer. But neither Jesus nor God has done that. So we're not even at a place where we can actually study these things. And that's another problem, is we can't even study the miracles that are claimed to have been in the past, because they're in the past. And the ones that are claimed nowadays are usually very mundane and boring. Like, this statue has never been exploded. That's a miracle. And I'm like, can I get some TNT and try to blow it up? Well, no. Of course you can't. Well, why not? Well, because it's gonna explode. Yeah. It would. And then it's not a miracle. And I've debunked one miracle claim, right? And you could say, well, you know, there's people that believe that let's see if I can find one, but pouring milk, that these statues drink milk. And there's a completely natural explanation of it. But the people that believe it's a miracle absolutely deny that natural explanation and say, no, that's not what's happening in this case. And so, unless you had a way to demonstrably demonstrate that the thing was the phenomenon that you're talking about, unless you had the God there, and then the God was saying, here's how the dang thing works, you wouldn't be able to say that it's from God or that only God can. In fact, God's power would also have to have some sort of explanation. And if God is something that doesn't deny the laws of physics, then God is not something that has to be outside of or separate from the universe, because apparently it's constrained by, or it's constrained, it's allowing itself to be constrained by the laws of physics or whatever. And so that's a very different God than the one that most theists believe in. And I say that without any proof that that's what most theists believe in, but I think it's relatively benign to show that that was the case. But at any rate, that's fine. Anybody can believe in any kind of God that they want, and people do. Again, I talked to a guy that basically believed that aliens, if they exist, could be God, or at least close enough. And okay, great. But so what? There's still no reason to believe that they are there, or that that's close enough equals God. It's just like saying that this isn't a miracle, or that it is a miracle. Either way, one of them has the burden, the other doesn't. This is a mundane thing. There's nothing miraculous about it. It's only when I make the miracle claim do I then gain a burden, because it's an unnatural claim. So what is the way to show that it's a miracle, that it's from God rather than not from God?
If you would agree with that claim, you have faith in the same way that Christians have faith in Jesus Christ, that naturalism provides all of the answers. That is an assertion that cannot be proven. And if you only believe things that can be proven, you shouldn't even believe that assertion in the first place. You can't prove the claim, quote, since events in the past had natural explanations, events in the future that can't be explained now will have natural explanations as well. And
no, but like I already said, the fact that every single time something has been shown to be natural does lend a lot of credence to the idea that later on is probably going to be natural as well. Every time I've seen a trick on Penn and Teller's Fool Us, it's been something that can be explained. I just don't necessarily know how to explain it. Sometimes, and most of the time, Penn and Teller do, and that's the whole hook of the show, is whether they can figure it out or not. And when they don't, they go, whoa, well, they get really surprised and happy that they don't know, and then they usually get told later on how it's done. But even if they didn't get told how it's done, they probably could figure it out given enough time, because there is something to figure out. Essentially, what is a miracle? You said it's something that can only be explained by God in your first video. Okay, so what is an example of something that can only be explained by God? And how do we know that it can only be explained by God? And wouldn't that mean that everything is a miracle? And that would be a problem. So which is it?
Quote. The argument for miracles isn't about putting God into explanations when we don't know.
Yes, it is.
Arguments from miracles are inferences to the best explanation. If you believe that the best explanation isn't a miracle, you need to provide evidence that at least attempts to explain the data.
No. Again, that's not how the burden of proof works. You have to show that it is a miracle, because a miracle isn't even an explanation in the first place, because it hasn't been demonstrated to even be a thing in the first place. I can assert all day long that this thing is a miracle. And I can say the only way to explain this is that Law, the lobster original deity, which is written about, by the way, in the Lobsterist, so therefore that must make it true, really is the thing that explains this, and nothing else explains it. And now you have to provide an alternate explanation for this, which of course I'm going to say, well, that's not it, that's not it, no, you didn't get it, that. I'm going to always say that, because if I really believe what I said, why would I change my mind? Especially if what I hold to believe is true is very near and dear to me. It matters a lot to me. I've put a lot of time, effort, and energy into it. Now, I speak for myself because I used to be a theist, and I have ample evidence that that's the case, my Infinite Hope videos. And I've argued against myself, saying, no, I was wrong and here's why. I would love for more people to comment on why I was wrong, because I think there's more to say, at least for my last one. But at any rate, if my door suddenly opens, let's see if I can see my door. Yeah. So if that door opens, that's going to freak me out because it's locked. Just had to make sure it was really locked. So I'm going to immediately, instantly go, jump out of my chair. That's going to pull my cord out of my computer, probably going to disrupt the stream, and it's going to freak me out. And I'm going to immediately think it was a person. Didn't happen. Because agency is what my brain is geared towards. But if I see nobody there, nobody's there. Empty. No animal. Nothing going on. No strong wind. In fact, it'd have to be a weird wind because that door opens out, not in. And it was locked. So it's unlocked and open somehow and nobody's around and I don't see anyone or hear anything. What would my conclusion be? Well, I could say that an alien did it. I could say a ghost did it, or that God did it, or I could say time travelers did it. I could say nanites did it. I could say any number of things, but ultimately I wouldn't know what did it. Because I simply don't know, and that's the answer. And sure, it's a creepy, weird event. Still not working. But it doesn't prove that it is the thing that I claimed it was. I could claim it's a ghost and then say, well, it's up to you to prove that it wasn't a ghost. It's up to you to give me a different explanation. No, it's not. It's up to me to demonstrate that my explanation is correct.
Because it forces the proponent to bear their burden of proof, rather than allowing them to shift it to you by appealing to ignorance.
Right.
And if they can't, and instead they either attempt to shift the burden of proof to you, or they simply appeal to ignorance, then guess what? Their assertion is unsubstantiated, and therefore their argument is too, meaning that it's game over. No ifs, no buts, it's over.
I agree with a lot of what Stephen has to say here in this final clip. If you want to claim that a miracle has occurred, you do have a burden of proof to provide some evidence, whether it's eyewitness testimony or medical data or some sort of evidence. But the problem is, when theists provide this evidence, the atheists will just counter by saying either A, that's not evidence, or B, there will be a natural explanation for your phenomena. That's a faith-based position, and I don't have enough faith to believe that naturalism provides answers to all the countless reported miracles. So,
whew, lots of fallacies there. Good job. Wow. So you missed the point that you have shifted the burden of proof throughout this video, and you don't apparently see that. I love the whole I don't have enough faith thing, because I would just say, is faith good or bad? Because all you've done is a 2Q. You as well. I have faith. You have faith. Ha ha ha. We both have faith. And I'd be like, really? Is faith good or bad? Because if it's good, then it doesn't matter. We should both try to have as much faith as possible. And if it's bad, then we should both try to not have faith in anything, which would make us a skeptic, which makes me right, and everybody else that's not a skeptic would therefore be wrong. So yeah, eat that. There, licked my own name. But you didn't demonstrate that a miracle is a thing at all. And as far as eyewitness things, yeah, atheists and skeptics keep telling you guys that that's not anything. And you guys keep not listening to us, because that's really all you have. In fact, you don't even really have that, if we're really honest. You don't have eyewitnesses to this event. You have somebody that wrote down that there was eyewitnesses to that event. That doesn't mean that there was eyewitnesses to the event, because there's nothing stopping anyone from just writing down something that didn't really happen. Gone with the Wind, for example, could have actually happened. Every event that happens in Gone with the Wind could have really happened, and someone could have recorded it accurately enough to get that story, although there's still parts of Gone with the Wind that couldn't be known by in the way that it is, because you have the all-seeing narrator that knows events that nobody could know, like what people are thinking, unless those people actually recorded what they were thinking at the time that they were thinking them. But still, you're going to need some huge data collection going on. And nowhere in Gone with the Wind do they go, and then I stopped what I was doing to write down what was going on so that it could then be made into a book and then movie later. But all of it is natural. But we know that it didn't happen. It could have happened, but it didn't happen. How do we know that it didn't happen? Even though it's mundane and natural and ordinary, we know that it's still not a true story. And once we understand how to know that that's not a true story, and we apply the same or similar methodology, I would say the same methodology, to theism, boy, those stories get wrecked real fast. But when you're applying no methodology at all, and where you're just saying, well, you know, it says in the book that there's 500 people that saw this, therefore there was 500 people that saw this, and 500 people can't be wrong about what they saw. Well, now it's on you to prove that those 500 people were wrong about what they saw. No, that's not how any of that works. Not only do you not have those 500 people, you don't know that those 500 people even existed. And you might say, well, we know a couple of them did. No, but do you, though? Well, I mean, why would they make it up? Why wouldn't they make it up? It's a good story. They just made it up because people make up stories. Because people want to make religions, because people believe in religions, because religions are easy to believe in, because stories are easy to believe. Reality is much more complex than a fairy tale. But a fairy tale you can remember easier, and so it makes it easier to transmit and to tell somebody else. This whole video that I've done just now has been an hour some odd long, so how in the hell do I hope that you will remember anything I said? Well, I'll break it down real simply. This is God. This, right here, this is God. The only explanation that could be offered is that this is God. Now it's up to you to show that it isn't God. If you're unwilling or unable to do that, then this is God. But it's not the God that you believe in making you wrong. But since I'm an atheist, I guess it makes me wrong. But I'm also a skeptic, so I guess me not actually believing that this is God makes me right in the end, unless this really is God. Now, if you can point out the logical fallacies in this Adherent Apologetics, I welcome you to do so. Because asserting that this is God and that the only explanation is that it's God, and that there can be no other explanation that it is God other than that it is God, and then asking you to refute that it's God contains the same amount of logical errors and fallacies that you produce. Actually, I would dare say contains less fallacies than you produced. But you didn't show us a miracle at all. At no point did you demonstrate anything that then we would say, okay, here is a miracle, here's how it works, here's how I identify them. You simply asserted in video 1 that a miracle is something that can only be explained by God, and then in video 2 said, well, he didn't prove his points, so that means I can still be right, but you didn't prove that you're right. You merely shifted the burden onto him and to us, which is where it doesn't belong. So, this is God, and if you can't refute that, then I win. That's what you did. That's the simple version of this whole entire video. Or I could summarize it like I normally do. We don't have any empirical evidence, any repeatable tests, or any valid and sound argument, and unless and until we do, we must be skeptical of your conclusions. All right. That's a good video. Yeah, that's a good video. All right, let's go. All right. It's going to take a while to render that in Vegas. Oh, shit. It's live. It's not a recording. It's live. Oh, my God.